All right, Ty.
We meet again, my friend.
How's life?
Good. Welcome one, welcome all. It is early. I know it is earlier than usual for these, but we've actually got a lot of news to discuss here.
Yeah.
Not necessarily surprising news, but for those who are podcast subscribers, we've got another show that's going to drop here to the public feed very shortly. If you're a Patreon sub, you got it yesterday, but this is going to hit the public feed. Bam, bam, one after the other.
Bam.
We will drop them to the feed, but this one needs to come first given the subject matter at play. So we will discuss. We will then package everything up nicely into a big old podcast package and drop it to the feed shortly thereafter. But good morning.
Good morning, dude. You ready to talk about Jim Harbaugh?
I am ready. So why don't we do what we've been doing? Let's count it in, right? Let's go from 3, from 2. Dan, we have breaking news.
Is that true?
We do. Jim Harbaugh official back to the NFL. It was an open secret, I feel, for months on end that he was at least going to flirt again with the league. Shortly after his national championship run with the Wolverines, whispers started becoming a little bit louder that Jim Harbaugh was dipping his toes in those NFL waters. He, of course, had hired an NFL agent. He met with the Chargers. He met with the Falcons. I don't know who else he met with, but alas,
there were Panthers reports potentially. Yeah, conversation. Yeah.
All across the board. It became official last night being Wednesday evening, January the 24th, that in fact Jim Harbaugh was going back to the NFL. So we've got a lot to unpack here in our college football world. This episode is going to, I guess, preempt the originally recorded episode that we dropped to the public feed, which was talking all about transfer portal strategies within, who used it to their advantage, who didn't use it to their advantage. So if you're a podcast subscriber, you're going to get 2 episodes in your public feed today. But why don't we start at the very top? Jim Harbaugh, Dan, going back to the NFL. Surprised, not surprised. Your initial reaction?
I mean, nobody's surprised that he's wanted to do this. Certainly a couple years ago, got pretty far along with an interview with the Vikings last year. I think there was a video call with the Broncos that ended with him deciding Michigan was at least going to be his 2023 move. When you consider the success he mostly had with the 49ers, it ended with some acrimony, with some, I think, disagreement with Trent Baalke, the then general manager, president, whatever, of the 49ers. But when you have that level of success in the NFL, the college success story can scratch it somewhat, especially given the narrative of Jim Harbaugh at Michigan and certainly the way he finished out his college coaching career, maybe for now, at Michigan. But coupled with the sort of negative aspects of Michigan's 2023 campaign, and I don't think that was internal, but certainly the Connor Stallions and sign-stealing allegations and suspensions both at the top and bottom of the regular season, with the number of high-profile jobs in the NFL available, that he was going to strike when the iron was hot. He was, in conversations to extend his deal at Michigan, but was asking for some things that Michigan didn't seem to want to bend on, at least for a long time.
Right.
And so, look, you see the success that he's had in the NFL, that his brother has had in the NFL, former NFL quarterback, that to those types of coaches, nothing is going to quite get you to that place like a Super Bowl crown. So given where the Chargers are, I don't know that Chargers fans exist, but they're certainly an operation that has a quarterback ready to become a star or more of a star or a superstar or whatever Justin Herbert might be able to ascend to. Those are going to be the most attractive NFL jobs, given Harbaugh's ties to the West Coast as well, that it just all came together very nicely to go ride into the sunset with a national championship and an opportunity to take over an NFL team that needs building, both sort of on the field and behind the scenes, it seems, but also one that's ready-made to win on a certain level because of the presence of a clear franchise quarterback.
Yeah, it's a pretty good roster. We're not NFL guys, but as NFL rosters go, it's a pretty good one. You've got the quarterback in
I think they
Herbert.
have some like age and cap issues. I think that's the situation
Yeah.
with the Chargers. I read our friend Bill Barnwell, sort of his appraisal of Harbaugh leaving for the NFL and what he's getting himself into, good and bad.
This is a very, very interesting tale. The Jim
Yeah.
Harbaugh won at Michigan was there 9 seasons after the 2020 campaign. Of course, some speculation that maybe they would go in a different direction because would they go 2-4 in 2020 in the weird COVID year? I mean, it was a weird year for all of us, frankly. And Jim Harbaugh wasn't excluded from that. But from that point forward, 3 straight wins over Ohio State, most notably going out, as you said, into the sunset, won the Rose Bowl in the semifinal game, won the national championship, now decides the time is right to go back to the NFL. 9 seasons in total at Michigan, 86-25. The NFL thing has been an open secret. I said it at the top, and I know we got tweets from people who I think took exception to the strong hints that maybe we had dropped that Jim Harbaugh would at least flirt again with the NFL. Anybody who covers this, and I mean anybody who covers it with any amount of seriousness, heard the whispers 3 months ago that this was a go, that this was something that we should just keep an eye on. It seemed at that point in time, again, 3 months ago, that this was a foregone conclusion. And so I don't say that to dispute any of the other reporting that's been out there, that his guys had also been working on a contract extension with Michigan. I'm sure that's all true. Absolutely trying to make sure that if he does come back to Michigan, he has the best possible arrangement for him. It sounds like maybe at the 11th hour, Michigan accepted some of that contract language that had been out there where he didn't want to be fired due to NCAA infractions or anything. Like really, really a sweetheart deal to go back to Michigan if it would come to that. But this is a dude who's been chomping at the bit to get back to the NFL. You know, he's not really been deceptive in those pursuits. This is a guy who went to a Super Bowl after the 2012 season and lost to the Ravens. This is a guy who went to 2 other NFC championship games in 2011 and 2013 before things sort of went south in 2014. He's obviously a very, very proven coach at the NFL level. I've heard some goes. I think Daniel Jeremiah went so far as to say this is an NFL coach who is very successful in the college ranks, not the other way around. And that's part of what makes him attractive to, you know, potential NFL suitors out there, notably the Chargers now. So this doesn't come as a surprise to any of us who have been following this. And it's not just people who cover it, but certainly people who read about it, who care about college football in the manner that we do. Like it seemed like there were plenty of hints out there. There's a lot of smoke that this could be a thing. So
the only exception I take to what you just said was you said it was sort of a foregone conclusion. Takes 2 to tango. Takes an NFL team to want him when compared to other people that they hired, which certainly was the place he was a couple of years ago with the Vikings, where he, I think, interviewed on signing day, sort of sat alone in a hotel room, and the Vikings sort of said, nah, I don't know. I don't know if this... And
it was, I think...
Make the move,
And that's fair. The difference between previous flirtations and I think this round of flirtations, it felt like there was a lot more smoke this time around.
Sure.
Like there was smoke after the season last year, but there was smoke during the season this year. Maybe because of some of the NCAA stuff, I don't know. Maybe just his desire to go back to the league, which everybody, again, sort of knew was out there.
Yeah.
But regardless, it is happening now. So it seems as if the obvious choice is in-house. The obvious guy to assume the throne of Michigan football is going to be Sherrone Moore. Sherrone Moore, who, look, was very successful in his limited run as a head coach. Had plenty of opportunities, right, to lose against Ohio State, to lose against Penn State.
Maryland,
like he won those games,
Yeah.
put Michigan in position to get to the playoff and win a national championship. Also had a bite at the apple earlier in the season. So he would be a fine choice, if only because of the way that the calendar sets up. This, of course, kicks off a 30-day period now during which Michigan guys could transfer out if they see fit. Sherrone Moore making the move now to kind of keep him. I think that's what's going to happen. Would definitely be a move in the direction of continuity. I want to upset the apple cart. I want to make sure we keep the nucleus there, keep guys like Donovan Edwards around as best we can, keep some guys on defense around as best we can. and then figure out what it means from a staffing standpoint otherwise.
Yeah.
There have been plenty of rumors that perhaps Jesse Minter will or won't follow Jim Harbaugh
A
out
candidate,
west.
it seems. Yeah.
But he, of course, comes from an NFL pedigree as well. So that, I think, is what we watch next. I'd be very surprised if Sherrone Moore, by the time most people hear this, watch this, is not the guy at Michigan.
Yeah, there is like a 7-day period where I think the job needs to be posted. Michigan may try to sort of get an exception, get a waiver to move quicker, certainly with what's going on and how teams can or rosters can fall apart in the portal. And so, you know, the amount of time Michigan, once they name a head coach, or at least once they put, you know, the vibes out, it's going to be more because he's going to need to hire coaches and they're going to have a lot of money to play with. Certainly the discount that they're going to get with Sherrone Moore at head coach, if and when he is named the head coach, as compared to what Harbaugh is or would have commanded moving forward money-wise. And so that's money that can be put into the assistant pool. Yeah, the two names were that I had seen were Jesse Minter and Jay Harbaugh, his son, who I think is in his mid-30s, special teams coordinator and safeties coach, I believe. I knew he had a position on the defense. Those are the two names, and maybe Jay Harbaugh, you know, in a decade or something, he's the next Michigan coach. And I should also add, just when you compare Michigan and an NFL job, it seems to be very much a lifestyle choice as well. And I don't know, I don't believe the Chargers have a GM at the moment, and that was where I think I used the word acrimony with the 49ers before. But all things considered, not recruiting 365 days a year, not dealing with the NCAA, not dealing with the details that you have to deal with on an hourly basis, right? Checking in on academics. You know, I'm not to say that Jim Harbaugh didn't like doing those types of things, but I think once you get a taste of the NFL lifestyle in which you can focus almost primarily on just coaching men play football, it's probably difficult to go back to what, you know, top level college head coaching demands. But you're right about Sherrone Moore. You're right about the assistants. And, you know, if there is that internal continuity move with Moore, I would expect this Michigan roster, the core of the Michigan roster, to be in pretty good shape. They're losing a ton, by the way. Yep. Losing a ton on both sides of the ball, J.J. McCarthy being the big name on defense. You know, all the seniors and grad transfers and graduate level guys, they're all gone. Junior Colson, I believe, was maybe the lone early declaration on the defense. The rest, everybody has sort of exhausted their eligibility. The offensive line, you know, the full-time starting offensive line completely gone. Blake Corum gone. Both starting receivers gone in Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson. And promising sophomores led by Will Johnson, who's a legacy All-American candidate at corner. It would be very shocking to see somebody like him leave at this stage of his career. You know, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham on that defensive line got a lot of meaningful snaps and were big-time playmakers. It would be hard to see them leaving because they've already been in the program for a couple years and been big contributors and are due to sort of take over enormous roles for the future of that defense. But never say never, I guess, in 2024 college football. So I would imagine whatever this roster process looks like in these next 2-3 weeks, I imagine if it is Sherrone Moore that it's going to go a lot smoother than things have gone at Washington and Alabama thus far. But look, it's a wild sport and wild things happen, but I expect it to be far less dramatic at this moment.
Yeah, and actually, to be fair, it is so late in the process now that it actually kind of works to Michigan's advantage, right? Other schools have made moves already to bring guys in. They have sort of firmed up their own rosters. And not to say if a superstar decides he wants to go into the portal, you can't find a way to work that guy in. But
well, that's in May, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just seems like at this stage in the game, especially with a move to keep Sherrone Moore, it's also a move to kind of keep that roster intact and hold it together. You know, of course, this kicks off many of the same questions that we just saw with Alabama. Mm-hmm. We've seen how things have gone down there. But I think for Harbaugh, at least from his standpoint, dude comes in from the NFL, coaches 9 seasons, beats Ohio State 3 straight years, wins the national championship, which Michigan had not done in an eternity, and now kind of on the precipice of roster turnover, whatever the hell the NCAA wants to do, to go back to the NFL. Like, from a personal standpoint, this would probably be the right time to do it. And I think if you hand that torch over to Sherrone Moore,
Right.
it's leaving the program in a really responsible way. I've already seen people online who were a bit flabbergasted, like they were going to make him the most paid coach in college football. They were going to succumb to all of his demands. This is a guy with no honor. I don't buy that. That's just BS. This is a guy who is going to go out a legend in some way, shape, or form as a Michigan coach, as a Michigan player, and to get them back to the mountaintop. He's definitely leaving the program in a better state than it was before he got there. And if you're a Michigan fan, look, I think that's all you can ask. He has been, and even the AD has said as much, he has been very transparent. He has been very open with the administrators about what his intentions were. And, I think that's all you can ask. This is not like a Brian Kelly situation where he's leaving in the dead of night and there's going to be a 3-minute meeting with players or anything. Like they've been through it now over the last 9 seasons. Specifically this last year, I'm sure was trying in many unique ways. For Harbaugh to go now, nobody should harbor any ill will over that.
Yeah, there's never been a better time for Jim Harbaugh to leave Michigan football, both because of his and the program's on-field success, also because of the off-field stuff, and also because of where college football is as a sport right now. It's never been more difficult to be a major head coach at a college football program. Like, you see what Nick Saban decided, he just couldn't live up to his own standard in 2024. That was probably more of an age thing. I think Harbaugh's 60? Not young, not old. But and you mentioned that leaving the program in a better place. He's leaving the program in a better place than it was also under him, not just before him, right? They went through a number of different iterations of that program. I think his first offensive coordinator is Al Borges. Quarterback had been sort of not the most stable place in that program, going from, if I'm getting these right, Jake Rudock to Wilton Spate, Cade McNamara. I think there was a John O'Cornier in there.
Oh, man. The O'Cornier.
Joe Milton didn't work out. Cade McNamara was pretty good, but had a clear low ceiling. And then developed his guy from day one in J.J. McCarthy. Has another big name coming in, the program does, in Jaden Davis, from not local, but from Charlotte. But things are just in a more stable place than they've been in a long time. And leaving with 3 straight wins over Ohio State, not nothing, that going out on that kind of winning streak. So in terms of the Michigan fan and the Michigan community's reaction, yes, I'm sure there's a ton of disappointment that the party couldn't keep going.
I get that. That makes
But I don't think there's going to be actual anger from savvy Michigan fans.
There shouldn't be. I mean, the people that I refer to are the ones that are getting ratioed out on social media. I don't think that represents the whole of the Michigan fan base, which of course is going to be grateful and is going to make a bronze bust of this guy and put it somewhere prominent because he is a Michigan legend. I think back to, I'm not much for the brothers storyline. I think it gets overplayed.
Okay.
I think it's fodder that people talk about when the game's already out of hand. But the way that he sort of reinvented specifically the defense the last couple of years in Ann Arbor, engineered specifically, tailor-made to stop Ohio State.
Yeah. He had a brother search committee too.
He had a brother search committee.
And Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. Yeah.
But that's the story that I think is interesting. You know, how he kind of reached out, how he was able to pick a guy off of his brother's tree, bring him to Ann Arbor, made that guy successful. That guy made him successful. Mm-hmm. And then again with Jesse Minter, the way that he was able to kind of assimilate those guys into his system, assimilate that NFL-style defense into his system quickly in hopes of achieving a goal and beating Ohio State, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's a story that perhaps we can all draw a little inspiration from. It's never too late to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, and it's also a story of roster development. It's also a story of changing things up. You mentioned with the assistant coaches, Biff Poggi has received a lot of credit for helping to, build that final chapter of the Jim Harbaugh era. He's now sleeveless and a Charlotte 49ers coach somewhere in the winter. But yeah, there has been that ability. You have to give credit to Jim Harbaugh, and it was the same thing that happened with the 49ers when he took over that franchise and when he took over at Michigan. It hasn't been about having, an all-pro at every position. That Jim Harbaugh was able to take guys who weren't necessarily considered blue chips wanted by every single program. He was building top 15 type recruiting classes and turned them into perennial playoff players, and was able to do it much in the same way where The offensive line almost immediately got way better, and that's a great place to start the line of scrimmage. As maligned as Don Brown was as a defensive coordinator for all those years, only because of what he was able to do against Ohio State, or not able to do, but was otherwise terrific in building those defenses up, that Jim Harbaugh has that eye for specific player and coaching talent, all things considered, that I think will do him really well. Hopefully will rub off on Sherrone Moore and the assistants that are retained in Ann Arbor. And the other element to this is Jim Harbaugh came into Ann Arbor with a ton of experience. Sherrone Moore does not. Sherrone Moore is in his late 30s and has been at Michigan, but has not been a head coach, has only been recently named a coordinator. And all things considered, you'd much rather have an internal promotion at head coach. And that seems to be, in the modern landscape, where you can most quickly succeed. But in terms of long-term, Sherrone Moore developing a vision, developing a national recruiting strategy, which Michigan very much should continue to do and will continue to do, having that assistant network, having, an operational vision for Michigan football, it helps that he's been there. But he's still young, hasn't been a ton of places, I don't believe. I don't know if you have his resume in front of you or can bring it up, but it's not automatic. It's definitely not automatic, and will be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the Sherrone Moore thing, you're right. I mean, he's a younger dude. He's 37 years old.
Yeah.
He's been a couple places, but has been at Michigan the last 5 years, was at Central Michigan, was at Louisville as a tight ends coach, I believe, for a year, and then was a GA before that for a few seasons. So I think you're fair to point out that it is not automatic. It is, at minimum, a stopgap move to keep the roster happy, to keep guys in place. And look, he is a talented recruiter. He's like a top 20 caliber recruiter per 24/7 Sports. If he's able to kind of flex those muscles moving forward, if he's able to build out a staff that makes sense to kind of keep the train rolling, these are all things. These are all trailing indicators. We'll find out about that 2 years down the line.
Yeah.
But if he's the guy, I think the most important thing is trying to keep whatever nucleus you have in place, making sure that you add beef to your coaching staff to help support you, because you're somewhat new at this, even though we had a bit of a trial run. And, just try not to upset the apple cart too much, given the fact that it's pretty late in the calendar.
Yeah. And look, the other element to this is there are only a handful of coaches that I think recruits and players will follow anywhere, that have that power of name, that power of face, if that's a term I can just invent out of thin air. Nick Saban was one of them. We saw what happened when players who very clearly, and rightfully so, went to Tuscaloosa to play for Nick Saban. I don't think it'll have the same effect with Jim Harbaugh leaving, but man, Jim Harbaugh can go into any living room and people are like, oh, this guy was in the Super Bowl. Oh, this guy was an NFL player. Oh, this guy is just a guy everybody knows his face and name and story.
Yeah, it's going to be different now. It will be different.
And
it will
so
absolutely be different.
You might see rotation guys you'll probably see rotation guys transfer out. And just Michigan's ability, even with a national championship, even with 3 straight playoff appearances, Michigan's ability to go to any high school, to go to any living room and have that sort of aura, have that sort of light, it's going to be different. It's going to be a different story to tell for Michigan football, because the Jim Harbaugh key opened up every lock, opened up every door. Even in the South, even wherever, when he's shirtless at 7-on-7 tournaments and running, these campus clinics, whatever, these high school clinics.
Yeah.
It's just different. Sherrone Moore's name is not going to be on the lips of Paul Feinbaum, is not going to be on the lips of Kirk Herbstreit in the same way that Jim Harbaugh's was. And so coupling that with the 12-team playoff era, coupling that with an expanded Big Ten, with a very, say what you will about whatever, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, floor is higher. There are going to be more difficult weeks strung together in the Big Ten and SEC moving forward. And you couple that with the movements in NIL and the transfer portal, Sherrone Moore immediately has a more difficult job than Jim Harbaugh ever did at Michigan. Or whoever it is, if it's Lance Leipold, if it's Chris Kleiman, if they go outside the family or whatever, the Michigan job is immediately more difficult moving forward. And so, again, I don't think Michigan fans, savvy, rational, sensible Michigan fans should care, because that's the joy of college football. It's the challenge of it all. But it's just for a guy who's, 36, 37, if it is Sherrone Moore, it's immediately an uphill battle, maybe a joyful uphill battle, but man, could not be more difficult right now. Following in the steps and you might have an opinion of Jim Harbaugh's legacy in this moment, but you're also, trying to fill some pretty large shoes here.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, the episode that we're going to drop to our public podcast feed.
Yeah.
After this one, we figured this one had to come first, given the fact that it's the news of the day and everyone's searching for Jim Harbaugh. We had to do that. The episode that follows is a broader conversation about the transfer portal. So we go into who used the portal effectively. We'll talk a little bit about Ryan Day. And actually, there is some tie-in here with this, because if you are Ryan Day, if you're an Ohio State fan, you look at this and you say, great, Harbaugh is gone. Now it's Sherrone Moore. Now we got Sherrone Moore.
Who he's 0-1 against.
Who he's 0-1 against, and also who does not have the same name recognition as a guy like Jim Harbaugh.
Sure.
So, not to give the game away too much, but part of my thesis on Ohio State is if they're not going to win now with Ryan Day, and especially so given that Harbaugh just left,
right?
It's fair to wonder when that might occur, given all the work they've done on that program. But go and listen to that episode, because we're going to drop that shortly after this one. We also get into, towards the end of that episode, some of the higher level transfer portal thoughts that I think you and I have, just having watched what transpired, not just in this offseason, but the one prior. The portal's not really slowing down. So what are our thoughts around that, and how might that shape college football moving forward, especially in the 12-team playoff era? So we get into all of that and much more. Would encourage everybody to make sure you download that episode, but needed to make sure we hit the record button on this Thursday morning, now 11 a.m. East Coast time, because big news, Jim Harbaugh officially headed back to the NFL, coaching the Los Angeles Chargers. Does appear Sherrone Moore is going to be the guy, but that is not official at time of recording, so don't hold us to that.
Finish your thought.
Go ahead, please.
Well, no, I was going to go back to Jim Harbaugh. Continue.
Please, I'm done.
Where does Jim Harbaugh, you're a college football historian. You wrote a Fielding Yost book, I believe, right? That's you?
Sure, of course.
John U. Hildenbrandt. Is Jim Harbaugh the best Michigan coach ever? Now, hold on. Doesn't have the most wins. I think Fielding Yost has only like 6 national championships. Lloyd Carr had national championship. Bo Schembechler, I don't believe, won any. And also, we don't have to talk about Bo Schembechler that much anymore. His legacy has allegedly made it easier to ignore Bo Schembechler. I think what Jim Harbaugh did at Michigan in winning a national championship, in taking this team to 3 consecutive 4-team playoffs, given how much more difficult college football is now in terms of player acquisition, roster management, with what he had to face in some SEC powers. Look, every era is different. You should be judged on how you do against the teams you stack up against. But I think they're now with the national championship, pending whatever comes to light, I suppose, with Michigan off the field, Jim Harbaugh's definitely an all-timer for Michigan.
He's a legend. I said it before.
Yeah.
He's a legend, because it's harder to manage a roster now. No question about it.
Yeah.
It is especially harder to win a national championship now.
Yeah.
You can decry the playoff all you want, but more bites at the apple to lose against good teams, that makes it harder to win. Say what you want about the 12-teamer. More games means more opportunities to lose. Those are all going to be good teams.
Lose key players, get bad breaks. Yeah.
They're all going to be good teams that are getting into the playoff moving forward.
Yeah.
It is not getting easier.
Yeah.
To win a title. And especially, I would say, in the Saban era.
Yeah.
Which 15 years from now might not even be a thing that people are looking at when they're thinking of Jim Harbaugh. But to get to the playoff in this era, to beat Saban, to close things out on that career, these are all things that I think are really, really important. And so, I don't know. I'm not good at comparing eras. I hate that conversation.
Sure.
But certainly this is a very complicated era. And all the NCAA stuff aside,
yeah,
He goes down as a legend. Absolutely. No question
And
about
also, by the way, just in terms of what he accomplished in the modern era for Michigan, even aside from specific wins and losses and players developed for the NFL, which I guess absent of receiver, like really strong offensive and defensive linemen up and down the defensive rosters that you developed into NFL draft picks. Quarterback wasn't there until now. Running backs, tight ends, whatever. He stabilized this program, right? You look at what happened with Rich Rod. You look at what happened with Brady Hoke. You look at the end of the Lloyd Carr era, which Lloyd Carr, obviously an all-timer for Michigan as well. That ends with App State. That ends with Dennis Dixon running both a real and fake Statue of Liberty and demolishing the Wolverines in the Big House. I never forget that, Ty. Never forget that.
Of course.
And then I think Lloyd Carr goes out on a high note. They beat Florida in the bowl game, but nowhere near the high note that now Jim Harbaugh goes out on
top.
And
Everybody wants to go out on top.
Stability. We've talked about this these past couple episodes and talking about the portal that's the new currency in the sport. It's great to have that great, late December signing day. It's great to, look great in the Phil Steele magazines and Athlon, whatever, ahead of the season. But bringing back guys, plugging holes like Michigan did really successfully, especially up front, both sides of the ball. Like Michigan is just on such solid ground, asterisk pending whatever happens off the field. But no, that's where they seem to be rich, post-Harbaugh rich in this moment.
Post-Harbaugh rich. We'll leave it at that. We would encourage everybody to make sure you hit subscribe or follow on the podcast.
Yeah.
Of course, that helps us. Leave a rating or review. I'll get back to reading some reviews next week. I took a few weeks off from that because I needed to collect them all. We got a lot that came in. So we appreciate everybody's support. ForBallers.com is where you can go to get bonus stuff and, of course, get access to the ad-free versions of all of our episodes. Jim Harbaugh going back to the NFL. Make sure you listen to the next episode where we talk about the portal.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts, as always, out on social media and, of course, at solidverbal@gmail.com. I'm Ty. He is Dan. As usual, stay solid.
Peace.